And all right, so we are live. So welcome to Celebrating the Brand Ambassador. This is episode 25. God, I can't believe it's episode 25. It's been a crazy year. It started off in November and now we're in June, but it's been exciting. Learned so many new things. And I'm excited to have with me Jordan Zimmerman, the Director of Brand Advocacy, right? Am I saying that correctly? For Brown-Forman. All right. And Cam Millar, who is the on a team of global brand ambassadors for Macallan in Eastern Canada, so Ontario. And the cool thing is both of you have both worked for Edgerton. Jordan worked there at one point in her life, so you both worked with Macallan at one point. So Cam meet Jordan, Jordan meet Cam.
Extended family, I like that.
Exactly. It's exciting to having both of you here, and it was really great to catch up with both of you yesterday. So the first question I always ask everybody to start, and Jordan, I'll start with you, is, and you can expand as much as you like. So what is your current position and like were your responsibilities underneath that position?
Sure, thanks.
Which I know is a loaded question because it has everyone has so many responsibilities, especially your job, Jordan.
I'm glad that you realize that, and I'm glad that you're doing this kind of series because I think it sheds light on the fact that a lot of us in these brand ambassador positions have similar situations to work through. So I did not put my title on the screen here because, just frankly, it wouldn't fit. I work with Brown-Forman, and Brown-Forman, it'll be 2 years in October, which is blowing my mind. And what my title is Premium Whiskey Education and Advocacy Lead.
Holy crap, that is a long title.
It's a So, basically I work in 3 separate buckets. If I really had to categorize what I do, first and foremost, it's taking care of our brand advocacy program. So that means that we're really looking at our brand ambassador program. We work through an agency. So I do a lot of coordination with our agency and to multiple points within Brown-Forman, brand teams, social media teams, sales teams, so on and so forth. So really developing and managing that program is the lion's share of my time. The other 2 buckets is I do manage all of our programs in which we take our distributors, our internal folk, and our brand ambassadors to our distilleries. So we have external programs and internal training programs where we get to take people to our Jack Daniel's, Woodford Reserve, and Old Forester distilleries on 2 or 3 day excursions and tastings and moments with our brands, our master distillers, so on and so forth. So that's a huge and a fun one. And the third is really all about the trade shows. So trade shows, festivals. So I manage sort of high level strategy and down to working with the local teams to manage execution of things like Brooklyn Bar Convent, Whiskey Fest, and our all-time favorite, Tales of the Cocktail. So
or hopefully one day it comes back to what it was. Fingers crossed. That is definitely a lot, and you're right. And before we get to Kat, I was going to say, as we talked about yesterday, so many brand ambassadors have the title brand ambassador, but their role is so much bigger. And even your title, you're doing so much more than what is actually underneath that one title. Cam, tell us what your title is, like what your role is, and what your responsibilities are.
Thanks, Elaine. And I think that was a great example of Jordan's description. Is it's a lot to do, and there's so many moving parts. So my role is the Eastern Canadian ambassador for the Macallan, although I do have the pleasure of representing all of Edgerton's portfolio. You get to put on a lot of different hats and become different characters. And that's not only on the brand side, but my role is the advocacy, education. The world of whiskey is becoming more and more elaborate, and people want to know more about it. And that's my job, to either help educate our retailers, our distributors, or of course our consumers. So first and foremost, that's what I do. I get to be a living, breathing embodiment of our distillery. Although, trust me, it's much, much nicer in Scotland. But I think in the role of the ambassador, you're constantly finding ways of introducing people to your distillery, to your spirits, in ways that best fit them, right? You want to make it accessible in every opportunity. So finding collaborations with other businesses or other brands, and more recently, taking on, that more marketing role. When you physically can't be there, how do you create new ambassadors? So that's through editorials, that's through videos, that's through sort of consumable education material. And so by virtue of that, I like to say as an ambassador, I'm an educator / marketer, and when I have to be a salesman.
That's a great way of describing it. And we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about your, the collaborations that you've done to kind of keep increasing the brand. And I totally get you on the the portfolio. You have one brand, like I was like Ciroc and Tanqueray 10, but one trade show, because everybody else got snowed in, I had to do the entire portfolio. So I was in Charleston, and it was a Charleston Food and Wine Festival, and I managed to make it in, and I was doing, I think there was no Ciroc, I was doing Don Julio. And then they're like, yeah, we just heard from the Bullet brand ambassador. She's not going to make it. Can you do Bullet? And then there was like, we just heard from the Tanqueray 10 brand. She's not going to make it. Can you do it? So every day, like the consumer in one day, they would kept coming back. They'd be like, what are you today? And I'm like, today is Tanqueray. And one day I did it all in one day. They're like, what hour is it now? I'm like, it's the Bullet hour. New hat. I would just put on a different hat, and I'd be like, let's go. It's the show. But it's what we do, right? It's what brand ambassadors and, working as a performance is like. You figure it out and you make it happen. All right. So one thing I do want to talk about, which is the first time I'm talking about this on the show, it's something I had to deal with, but back then it was a little more, it was very different. Is that, Cam, you did not come from the liquor industry. You weren't a bartender or any of that nature, wait staff, and you came from the event side. And Jordan, you tell me something interesting, that a lot of people who work for Brown-Forman, the original team, and I think probably a few people still there, also don't come from the bar industry side, which makes your job, you probably have different skill sets, which makes it, that you probably bring to the table. But at the same time, you still have to navigate the industry on a different playing field. So Cam, I'm going to start with you. Like, how did you learn to kind of like navigate the industry? You told me some fun things yesterday of like how you just kind of kept yourself open, and like I want to hear more about it, like how you kind of dove in there and kind of just started figuring it out. What were some of your tactics?
Yeah, coming into the industry, you don't know these jobs exist until you go to a tasting, you go to a festival, and you're like, this is someone's job. You get paid to do this. Amazing. How do I get involved with that? But I was in XM marketing, and really that in a nutshell is creating living, breathing commercials. And this opportunity of being a spirits ambassador came across my desk by virtue of my fiance now. We were dating, and she said, hey, our company is doing this program. I think you should do it. You love talking and you love whiskey. They'll teach you the rest. So I took it because I had a genuine interest in it, and I didn't have a budget to buy it. So you might as well work for them so you can afford it.
That's some of the best parts. Corporate card and the
right. That's the real perk. And I did that for 3 years. It was a part-time job. I did evenings and weekends. And instead of being like, I'm getting bored of it, or it's too much to do with my full-time marketing job, I started ignoring my full-time marketing job because I like this one so much more. And, you start saying, well, what's the next step? Where do I go next? And when I eventually landed this job by virtue of reaching out to ambassadors and finding a job listing, I knew I was behind the 8 ball, right? I didn't know the ins and outs of the industry. I didn't know how bars were run or the intricacies of it, but I owned it. I came out and said that to people. I don't know how to do this. I'm looking at you all as the experts. What I'm here to do is help you understand more about what you love about this spirit. Let me give you the insider scoop that I've been able to get. I've been lucky enough to be led behind a sort of velvet curtain, and now you're going to come with me. And I would open up myself to them giving me more advice. What do people tell you about this? How have you found serving this? Or what's your best way to introduce someone to these spirits? And I was as much of a sponge as I could be while simply giving them a bit of value where I could. And the more I learned, the more I was able to give them more. So I just left myself open to continue learning.
No, I think that's such a great approach to it. It really is, because you're transparent. You weren't trying to be somebody you weren't, and then you're allowing them, but just giving them the little piece like, this is what I do know, and this is how I can help you. I think that's really, really cool. Smart. Good move.
Thank you. Yeah,
Really,
I think being
it really
a
was.
BA
It seems to have worked for you.
yeah, well, being a BA is about authenticity. It's about having a story to tell that's genuine. And we have our key messaging, we have our stories to tell, but it should be your story. And when it is inauthentic, I think you can taste it right away. You know, you're like, you're just reading the little script you read on the sell sheet before you got here. But if I was more genuine, A, it makes the job a lot easier, and B, I think people resonate to it more.
Absolutely. People connect with people who are authentic. It's the first key in being a charming person, and somebody that somebody likes is being authentic. Even if you're an asshole, people will like you more.
No,
Go ahead, Jordan.
Best BS meter for bartenders.
You're cutting out. Go ahead.
I say that people with the best BS meters are bartenders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the BS radar. Yeah, they will detect your BS right away and understand that you're just full of shit. So Jordan, you have the same problem. So you have people. How do you mentioned to me yesterday that you were creating an advocacy program to getting them to be more advocates because they came from the sales side or they just came from outside the industry. So I don't know what some of the tactics.
I think first of all, a couple of things. I also I'm specifically positioned to help them come into the role because I also never tended bar to pay my rent.
I didn't know that.
I didn't.
Me neither.
See, look at us. So I think what's interesting is that a lot of times people see a very linear path. And I think what happens with that is we miss a lot of really potentially incredible talent if we think it has to be behind the bar, in front of the bar. And it's the only way, right? So I taught pairing and tasting classes, but much of them were wine forward. So I worked for a cheese company. I didn't just work in booze, I worked in cheese. Parents were really proud. But I taught tasting classes, so I knew how to talk about product, and I knew how to tell a story, and I knew how to be passionate about a product because that was natural to me, right? So, I come from that world, and then worked in very traditional marketing, similar to you, Cam. I worked for a restaurant group based in New York, and then fell into a BA role with Edrington. Funny enough, Edrington. Record of taking risks on people they find to be really talented and have a lot of potential and a lot of passion. So I really appreciated that opportunity from them. But with my team, we have people we have an EMT, former, who has just become a rock star. We have actors, and that's pretty common. We have some bartenders, people from the distributor side. And I think what we've been able to do is what we've done really well is hone in on our hiring, right? We look for the qualities that you cannot teach that are absolutely integral to being a good brand ambassador. So communication, and I think honesty, like Cam said, really important. Connection. So people who want to be around people, so important, right? I actually some brand ambassadors who have the biggest name are not those people. They want to be on the stage, but they don't want to be around. They don't actually want to make the connection, right? So how can I suss out in an interview how people want to interact with people, right? I think that's huge. And then I really think it's about willingness to learn. So similar to what Cam said, I do a lot of asking in the hiring process of asking folks, tell me something you're excited about. Tell me something you learned recently, right? You can watch them light up. You can watch them be procedural or light up, I think is the better way to say it, and talk about things that they're gathering and things that they're learning, because this job is a constant process of learning. I think absolutely. Whiskey specifically, but spirits even more broadly, is that you're never going to know all the answers. I felt that way about wine. I felt that way about cheese. And those were the industries I worked in. And I feel that way about spirits, right? So you have to have someone coming in to really, want to learn. So I think the hiring process of these folks is important. And I think it's looking for things you can't teach in order to build a team. You can teach technicalities. But you can't teach passion, and you can't teach wanting to be around people all the time. And I think that's particularly why we've seen so many people struggle in this last year, because our industry is built on being around people. So being about how to reconnect and cultivate those relationships, I think has also been really important. So
yeah, and we're definitely going to, no, I think those are all really great points, because it is about being, and you really can't teach passion. And so if a person has that and they have that willing to want to put in the effort to actually learn and to understand the industry, and to be open to being humble and being like, I don't understand this. Can you teach me? I always tell, my story, which is I was the head mixologist for the largest drinks company in the world. I had never worked behind a bar before. I made my own job. I was like, this is what I want to do. And they're like, what is a mixologist? This is 2005. This is how old I am. So, and they're like, 2005, I was like, well, it's a person I can design the cocktails for the brand and whatever. And I'm like, but I don't know how to do it just yet, but I'm going to learn. And then I took the Bar 5 course, and then I met Jim Meehan there, and then he taught me, and then any place I could mentor with somebody. So I was lucky being here in New York. I had Dale DeGroff to spend time with. Like, I was like, Dale, I will be your bar back all day. So I used to bar back with him. And one of the things that really helped me is, as I did get better, I remember Jim Meehan anointed one time and said, you can now call yourself a mixologist. And it was about 2 years later. And I'd already been behind the bar making terrible drinks, like at the Diageo bar and working at accounts, but I finally started getting it. I started understanding all the concepts and things like that. And Google wasn't that, up that then. You just couldn't Google all the recipes. You had to buy physical books, and go to conferences. And, but one of the best things I ever did for myself, Cam, kind of like you, like being open, is I always felt like a fraud. Here I am, I'm on the largest drinks company, right? And I'm the head mixologist. I'm on shows like Bar Rescue and doing these things. And I'm like, fuck, like I'm the person people are coming to, like, they're asking me for advice, and I was learning, but I really need to understand on a deeper level. So I did internships. I asked the Dead Rabbit if I could intern with them, and I did a week there. I asked the Nomad if I could work with them. I worked with them for a week, and they were like, what do you want to do? I'm like, everything. Get me here at 9 o'clock in the morning. I want to cut the garnishes. I want to do the syrups. I want to set up your bar. I want to do the ice. I want to understand how a bar works from start to finish, and then work behind your bar. And they were like, nobody's ever done that before. I'm like, I know, but I'm like, how else am I going to say, if I'm teaching other bars how to run their bars, I want to make sure the words coming out of my mouth are from the best bars that ever operated, some of the best. So it was a great experience, and I highly recommend it to people if they ever have a place that could just work for a few days to really understand the grind and how it all works. It's really eye-opening. So for me, that's how I did it.
I also that I think something that you said that really resonates with me, and something that had helped me when I came into a space of asking bartenders to buy my product when I hadn't been them, was being relate on the level of when I worked at a cheese shop, like I started on the cheese counter being a cheesemonger. I took out the trash. I swept the floors. I worked in that sounds cool. It's not cool. It's 32 degrees, 50% humidity all the time. It's freaking freezing. You're patting mold into cheese and wiping cheese mites off of cheese. Google those later.
Ew.
Like, it's not actually nice at all, but you do the grunt work. You take out the trash, you plate the cheeses, and you sit in the back of the classroom, you refill people's wine. And eventually you start to do is, you start to pick up the details, but you also gather an appreciation for what it takes to give people an elevated experience. So now it's my role to, activate and be the face of the elevated experience. But, I think people can sense if you have never done a job like that, right? And so I think that's awesome and so important for people to know.
No, it really is. And the one thing about this industry is that, I've always said to people, I'm like, if you're willing to learn something, somebody's there is willing to teach you. You just have to ask. You really do. It's like, everybody I've always asked, it's like, and they've been, I'm like, listen, if you don't have the time, I totally get it. You're really busy. And there's now a lot more people we can ask, which is great. But it really is. It's just about asking. And, people are always willing. They're like, oh my God, I have all this knowledge in me. I just want to share it with somebody. I mean, obviously be mindful of their time, but it is. So sounds like we all had some good life lessons of figuring it out along the way. And I forgot to print out I did print out my questions, and then I forgot to bring them with me. So I'm reading off my screen. All right. So we're going to talk about, next step about being a brand ambassador is obviously understanding the product that you're working for, right? So Cam, I know you came from the event side, you started learning whiskey and you started being out there. And Jordan, you also have worked on, doing whiskey, many multiple products, right? But at the beginning, you're not an expert. And I hear this panic from a lot of new brand ambassadors a lot. They're like, oh my God, like their first presentation, and they start freaking out. And I know I did. I was like, oh my God. And you think you have to memorize every technical detail, and like the temperature comes off the still, and like, whatever, the proof comes out, and everything down to the nitty gritty. And then you realize after doing it for a while, you're like, oh, I don't really need to know all that information. Like I should, but I'm usually only communicating some things, right? So Cam, you presented to me yesterday an interesting philosophy when you are presenting to consumers in trade, and sometimes they're giving you information back to you. So talk about how you navigated when you first started doing it. And Jordan, I'd love to hear your advice as well. Cam, what did you do?
It's interesting. When I started, like I said, I had a 2-day crash course on single malt and Scotch whiskey. And, we started at 8 a.m. Again, I probably hadn't had breakfast because that's quite early for me. And then right away, we're talking, we're nosing, we're tasting. It's like, oh, information retention is going to be difficult. And then you start presenting and you start catching yourself saying things. You're like, oh, no, that was wrong. Or people start asking questions and you hear the same question 8 or 9 times. You're like, oh, I should address that early on. So that establishes that common ground. So, the more you started talking through it, the easier it sounded. Almost like a dance or a choreography. You learn the movements and the words start coming out easier. You start realizing topics flow into one another. It's 10,000 hours, right? To become an expert or a professional at something. That's what it took, is to just practice on your friends, practice on the mirror, practice with people. But filling that information with the right stuff's very important. So from that sort of 2-day crash course, I realized where my knowledge kind of fell short. And so I wanted to know certain things. Other stuff, I wasn't as interested. The biology maybe not there for me, but why did someone do this? Why did they choose oak? Why did they choose barley? What's the point? And so I went to a used bookstore. I got Davin Cormigo's Canadian whiskey book. I got the whiskey miscellany. I got the malt whiskey book. I just started getting books. I got to university. That's how I learned, was like, let me just read the topic. And I read them back to front twice. And you start realizing that there's a hunger for the knowledge. And that's really what got me through the early stages of transitioning from just, a local BA pumping out that brand story to, well, the brand story also led to, I can talk about whiskey in general, and I can explain any other spirit you ask me about. And that's really where it grew into strengths, where you just arm yourself with a couple little pieces of knowledge that if anyone maybe challenges you or at least brings up something, you go, oh, well, actually this, and then you can roll back into your typical script. So I think once you've equipped yourself with the choreography and the information, you can really do any presentation, whether it's 100 people or 2, you can really find your way through it. And I think that's what did me the best, is practice and just learning the right elements of what I wanted to know.
No, those are all great points, and practice definitely makes perfect when it comes to doing. And you do have to do your research, because once you understand distilling once you understand the fundamentals of how all spirits are made, it makes it much easier to understand the spirit. But you said something to me yesterday, and that's what I wanted to expand upon, which was sometimes people present new information to you. And how do you, what do you do? Like somebody's like, well, actually, I know this about whiskey.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about that.
When you started, I was going to people's homes. In the evenings, I'd drive to a random person's home and I'd knock on the door and say, hi, I'm here to do the whiskey tasting. Come into their dining room, set everything up. A group of people I'd just met sit down, and you've instantly got to make friends with them. But then they'd ask you a question. And in the first, I'd say 2 years, almost once a week, someone would ask me something and I would have no idea what the answer was. And I typically go, that's a great question. And I typically give them maybe a little bit more whiskey to say, that was a great question. You know what? Here's a little more whiskey for you. And I'm going to find out the answer. So I'll give you my card, send me a note, and I'm going to get the answer for you. So then it forced me to actually go back to the source and say, hey, I got a really good question. Can you explain this further to me? And then I would further explain that to the individual. So I took it as a learning opportunity where I would be honest and say, I've actually never thought about that. That's really good. And then that person would feel extra special because they're like, oh, I said I got something he didn't know. And you own it. And then it literally gives you another learning opportunity, because then that question would come up again, and I had that in my back pocket. So I took all these opportunities to be more of a sponge. And I think that's what we do as ambassadors, is you keep learning from all the people you meet so you can continue to grow and become really relatable and accessible to a constantly new audience.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a great way of looking. It's a very positive way of looking at it. Instead of like somebody's trying to stump the audience, it's more like, and it's, that's what makes you a great BA. It's like, that is an awesome question. Like, and I unfortunately don't know the answer, but I'm going to find out. And I'm going to also give you a tip. I want to hear Jordan, somebody else taught me about how we can handle this.
A couple of things I think about this, and this is what I was taught, is we, especially as a new ambassador, we go into a room and we think, this is the test, right? I want every new ambassador to remember that it is an open book. It is an open book exam, okay? And your book is your distiller that you have on speed dial that you can text, your brand team that you can email or text, right? So on and so forth. People who've done the job before you, people you interviewed with, right? You are actually so much closer to that information than anyone in the room, and it is not a closed book exam, right? And there's no time limit. So I love, Cam, I love the way you approached it, because I very similarly did the same thing. And if I really needed to exert a sort of a sense of, how do I say this, expertise in the room, if I felt, oh crap, like I actually need to look like an expert here, what I did was I was absolutely willing to say I didn't know the answer, but the way I phrased how I will find the information was a little different. So instead of saying, I'll find that out for you, I'll say, you know what, I'll text Chris. He's our master distiller. Let me get that answer for you, right? And what that does is it reestablishes the fact that you are the expert on the brand. It also shows vulnerability. Big Brene Brown fan here. Like, vulnerability will give you the win all the time, right? But it also lets them know, as those who are attending your tasting, right, that you are the one closest to the information, and you are the one closest to the answer sheet for the exam, right? Mm. That alone gives you a sense of credibility that no one else in that room is going to have. And as someone, and I think some people may see that and think, that's a little aggressive, right? And I think that especially as a female brand ambassador who represented the Macallan and represented Scotch whiskey, and whose name is Jordan Zimmerman and worked in New York, like, I was supposed to be a Jewish male walking in the room.
That's so true.
People are hard, but especially being a woman in the spirits industry, which is not that rare now, but even 5 years ago was a little strange depending on what spirit you represented. I think that there were times and spaces where I needed to reestablish the expertise in order to have a really successful event, right? It's never making someone feel they weren't valued, but I think there was a balance of power in the room that did need to be especially as a female in certain spaces. So I would just point that out because I think there's a time to be really, really different, and a time to make sure that there are little tweaks in the ways we can present information to make sure that we still have the floor.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely agree with you. And it literally is not, the Cam, no, shame you as a male. You're just born that way. You can't help it. But it is. There is a thing, obviously, with whiskey and women. If you falter a little, people will try to trump you, and you'll lose your power in the room. You'll lose your authority, not power, authority in the room. And that was actually the point I was going to give. And Jordan, Cam, I don't know if you have access to your master distillers, because this is the. I had a few, and I never thought to do this, but back then texting was not as God, I sound so fucking old, but texting was as prevalent. To text, a lot of masters said, nope, I've actually stopped my presentation and been like, you know what? I don't know that right now, but I'm going to ask my master distiller. I think he's still up, and texted their master distiller in the presentation. And the distiller has texted them back and been like, here's the answer, and been able to tell. So they've literally stopped their work. We're going to stop for a second. I'm going to give a little text. I'll be right there, and we'll just find out. And if it came back, they came back. And I like that, Jordan, but showing that you are the closest person to give them that information. Like, I'm not the distiller, but I'm the next best thing. So yeah, this is, information that only a distiller would need to know. Because some of this information you just don't need to know. Like, it's really, I don't need to know how the chemistry works. I mean, I understand it. And after taking WSET level 3, I understand it on a much deeper level. I'm like, oh, that's how that works. I never understood what reflux was until I took that course. I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about. But you never have to talk about that, right? You never have to have that conversation because you're not a distiller. Why would you? So I think those are all really great points. It's like, you know, how you frame the question. And Jordan, you are not off base, because as a woman in whiskey, still to this day, sadly, you still have to have that authority, because men are still going, I don't know, it's a girl. Not you, Cam.
And a young right?
Yeah, and a young woman.
And
yeah, I definitely think so as well. All right, so we talked about that. We talked about, okay, so let's talk about also, all right, so during the pandemic, obviously, you know, 2020, I think most of our like, 2020 happened and it didn't happen, and it's going to keep moving on, but obviously it did, and obviously it was challenging. And social media, and then if anybody, because there is a few people watching, and if you want to chat with us, please just put your comments in the chat and ask questions. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so during the pandemic, you know, social media became a medium that every BA, you know, we all had to learn how to Zoom. We all had to learn how to use Instagram Live, all these things. And, you know, you both had your own little unique problem, not little, they were actually big problems within this front. So Cameron, you know, representing Macallan, which is a very expensive Scotch, you felt a little uncomfortable because you're like, there are people who have lost their jobs, you know, working, and I'm talking about an $85, $150, you know, bottle of Scotch, you know, I know it's around that range. They ranges, you know, probably up to $200, $300, $400, right? And it's a little awkward to be like, talking about this, you know, online, but you came up with some clever ideas, and I would love to hear, because I think it's something that can continue forward, obviously, even after the pandemic. So I'd love to hear, have you expand what you did on social media to kind of bridge that front.
Yeah, I like to consider myself sensitive to people's emotions. You get into the room, it's reading people and knowing, you know, this is not a topic for this, and you want to make sure you address it in the right way. And, you know, during 2020, it wasn't only COVID. There was a lot of social upheaval and change and protest, and you know, there was better messages that needed to be heard than, hey, are you drinking this? And I didn't want to come across that way, but at the end of the day, I had a job to do, and there were people who were at home, who had whiskey collections, who wanted to be drinking or engaged. So it was a bit of a landmine you had to navigate. And so what I wanted to do was say, well, why do most people drink? Well, it's to gather, it's to celebrate, it's to have conversations. And that's 99% of the time I'm drinking is usually when I'm having a conversation with someone. And I think the whiskey I typically choose is based on who the audience is. And that's a great way to talk about it. So what I want to do is have, you know, the Macallan conversations on a weekly basis. I'd have a guest come on who could talk about something that's universal, but could teach me something about it. So whether that was a tailor who could teach me, you know, how do I pick a tie with a suit? You know, what's important about getting, you know, that first tailored suit? Maybe it's music. I love hosting. And if I'm going to be cooking my fiance dinner, you know, what music should I pair with this red wine? And then how do I pair it with, you know, a dram of the Macallan? Can you help me become a bit more cultured? And then it was a talk with, and I spoke to this about Christina Vieira, the industry. It's changed. It's never going back to the way it was. We have a chance now, maybe not the reset button, but can we evolve? Can we grow? And it was for someone who's constantly fighting for the rights of the industry and pushing these changes that need to happen. What can we do as consumers coming back to restaurants? What's the role we can play? And for everyone tuning in, you know, if I want to go and support you in a way, what's the best way to do that? So I just found a way to say, let's be together in spirit. Let's raise a dram of Macallan and have a great conversation. And I found that was a way of being topical without being tone deaf and still find a way to reach people in an entertaining and educational manner.
Which I thought was really, really clever, you know, because you were going outside the industry, but bringing topics in that were very relevant to everybody, but recognizing that, hey, everybody just wants, you know, you know, but also, I know you also talked about yesterday, but also things that were relevant to what was going on in the world, you know, making sure you had inclusive guests and making sure that everybody was diverse. There was a lot of diversity represented, which I think was really, really, you know, it was really keeping an eye. You were really listening to the times and what was relevant to everybody. So I'm sure you had a lot of great response to that. And Jordan, you had your own unique problem. because Brown-Forman they're an old, as she said to me, we're a family company, and social media and those kind of things, you know, and I've heard this before from other Brown-Forman guests, they didn't really use social media that much. So you had to like bring this topic to life.
So yes. So I like to say that Brown-Forman is a cruise ship, not a speedboat. We'll get there. We'll get there in a way that you enjoy, right? Not going to be there first, and that's okay. On certain things, and in other ways we are very progressive, sustainability, diversity, right? But when we're talking about social media and the tools that we use, our brand ambassadors did not have social media accounts to actually speak on behalf of the brands, and that may seem crazy to some other brand ambassadors whose companies are social media focused, heavy, forward, however you want to say it. But a lot of what our folks did is really show up in person. And I does that, but I mean, that was the majority of their job, and they did it very, very well. And we trained and tended to lean into that. So, you know, our folks didn't have branded Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts. And if you're trying to catch me in a lie, you probably just saw it before it was official. Don't one whose it was. I don't care. I don't want to know. Either way,
right.
We were able to say is like Brown-Forman is a family company. And one of the things, there's a reason why the average tenure at Brown-Forman is about 12 to 13 years once you get the company. That is very, very long. And it's because you feel taken care of when you're here. And people were first in this pandemic, but of course we were up against an incredibly precarious potential business situation, right? Oh crap, bars and restaurants are closed. What the hell are we going to do? And so with that, with those sort of opposing notions, what I was able to lean into our digital team, our legal teams, our brand teams is say, look, I know you care about these people. And Brown-Forman positions itself as a company that cares about people. If we don't want to furlough these people, we have to find a way to pivot their ability to talk to the same group we want them to talk to by giving them the tools to do it. I always say that my job is to fight for the tools my team needs. And once I get it to them, get out of their way. It is not my job to do it for them. I'll go fight on the front lines with them. But probably the time they want this like old, BA has been to be out of their way, right? They can do it, right? They're incredible, and we hired the right people to do it. So I think that we did lean in. We were able to talk to digital. We were able to talk to our social media teams and get those things approved. And it was a big shift, and it's just proven again and again and again so incredibly useful, because once our folks had those presences on social media platforms, we were able to say, oof, we cleared that. We were able to prove our concept of it's not that scary, right? Like they will speak well on behalf of the brand, and they did, right? And once we were able to prove that, we were able to lean into other digital platforms and have the confidence that our folks could represent our brands digitally in a way that we didn't have to worry about every single detail of all of the time. Trust them to do their jobs. So guys, let's give them the tools and let them go. Trust me, they've got it. Right. And I think so not only was it giving them tools, it was also instilling a certain level of trust in them, I think, across the business to get done what they needed to get done. And something that I'm really, 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 really proud of is that we're one of the only big suppliers I know of who did not furlough a single brand ambassador and did not lay off a single brand ambassador all year.
Which is amazing in itself. And I will say, the fact that they were able to probably use social media in a new way probably was also relief, because I know a lot of brand ambassadors, I'm sure Cam, you felt, they all were panicking. I was talking to people and they were panicking, like, all right, so are they going to let me go? Like everybody, and they would get reinsurances and everybody, they're like, yeah, but still, like, I'm not really doing anything. So, what can I do? So they were scrambling and really stressing and getting themselves out there. So giving them that outlet probably was also a big stress reliever for a lot of them, knowing that because nobody likes to feel useless, right? So having something to be able to do and put it out there in the world gave them something to do, right? So it gave them a useful feeling to be productive. And did you have to give them, and Cam, I'm wondering, same for you, like, did your company provide guidelines, like legal guidelines, so you didn't cross over, things? Any like, what's a standard guideline? Cam, I'll ask you, like, what's a standard guideline for you, like, to not? cross.
I guess the standard guideline is going to be, don't overconsume. There's no need to drink. And I think that was a big thing to think about during COVID when everyone was stuck at home, is there's no need to drink. It's more about provide the insight to the product and what makes this special, more so than you should drink this and drink that. I think it's always being cognizant of what setting everyone's going to be in. And also yourself not over consuming. Having a drink on live is fine, but don't refill a second and third time while you're talking on live. It's make sure it's always about the moment and the enjoyment and the celebration more than anything. So I've always had to have an account. It's kind of a regulation. The big thing for an ambassador like myself was going from portfolio, speaking to all of our distilleries and being able to put on those different hats and have those different personalities and moments come forward, to now we're just going to talk about Macallan. And then you had to sort of reassess and adjust your narrative and your story without leaving your 600 square foot condo. that's a bit difficult to do when you're typically traveling, visiting bars, showcasing the amazing people in your industry, and now it's the one-man show trying to juggle and talk about spirits. So yeah, it was not so much a don't break a rule as much as stay topical and stay interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, Jordan, I don't know if there's any guidelines that your ambassadors have to follow while online.
I think, one of the things that we work with in the US that's different from country to country, in the US, state to state, right? But one of the big overarching things is that, in the US, certain suppliers will actually define giving things of value to trade, which is against the law, right? Giving value to trade as actually tagging their accounts or their personhood in their posts, right? So where we land on that is that we don't tag accounts. Because that's showing favoritism to an account, to a retailer, right? So when we are promoting our things on social media, we can promote the bartender, which I actually really like that angle. And we use that to say, guys, okay, we can't tag accounts. No big deal. You know who can tag? The person making the drink. Like, let's talk about, right? Again, bring it around to the people. And I think that's been really powerful, but it is one of the things that we've had to navigate and stay away from. So that's an example of something that we want to stay away from, and that, but that's different for us than it is for our brand ambassadors in the UK, in Barcelona, and sitting on the Global Advocacy Council, I have to bring I bring a lot of balance to our conversations, or maybe just tension, when we talk about how we talk about our global programs on social and how our brand ambassadors are going to be able to do that, because oftentimes it's the way we frame the language, and even sometimes the way we take the photo that leaves out the name of the bar. And I think, again, I love to say that, because if there's brand ambassadors out there who are struggling with companies who have those same rules, or are bars trying to tell the brand ambassador that they're disappointed that they weren't tagged in it, I think the better way to approach that is ask the question, right? We just went through a global pandemic. I'm so proud we didn't have to let anybody go and didn't feel the need to all their value. But there are certain things, tagging accounts, that can get you into real hot water really fast, and lose your job, right? So, I think that there's different stipulations from different companies, and different companies' legal departments are define that law in totally different ways. The reason why some
absolutely
it and brand ambassadors are going to do it because they've been told they can, right? And there's some reason other companies are not going to do it because maybe they've been fined. Who knows?
Who knows? Now, bigger companies tend to be more conservative. I mean, Diageo is extremely conservative, but I think it's a good point. Highlighting the bartenders is a great way of being able to support them, because they're the ones that you want to, and we're going to talk about this, how to make people your advocate. It's a great way of doing that. And one of the key things I heard about, within the pandemic and from a lot of bars, because some brand ambassadors were still out. Like, I know it was much harder, Cam, and Canada, you guys were shut down completely, and bars were shut down. But here in New York, bars, we never really shut down except for the first month. And then after that, bars were open, right? So bars, in some capacity, right? They were doing to-go cocktails. So I've had a lot of bar owners that are like, the brands we're working with now, the ones that stopped in, like the ones, if you could, knowing if they're allowed to, like she's like, there are some brands I didn't see at all. And she's like, and there are others driving their car by, picking up a bunch of to-go cocktails and just heading out, but it was also the bartenders. If you supported the bartenders, like paying them a certain amount of money to like be on your, like, I'm going to pay them for a cocktail and their time is like just showing that support and love. And it's also something we can do going forward, because it is still a way of engaging the bartenders. And we're going to talk about this next, which is ways of making bartenders advocates for your brand, because it's not an easy task to do. So, and I know, Jordan, we had a question before that, but we're going to go to this and then we're going to go back to the legal question, because I know you have some great insights in this. But let's talk about that. I want to talk about making people your advocate, because on this show we have discussed how to make the distributor your advocate when you're out with them, but we haven't discussed like how do you make bartenders and wait staff advocates for your brands, because they have tons of brands, they have tons of brand ambassadors coming in. How do you get them to recommend your brand, or at least have the information to talk about your brand? Cam, we talked about something yesterday I thought was really clever. You talked about back pocket stories, so I'd love to start with you. Like, what do you do to win those bartenders over so that they recommend Macallan above other spirits, before dinner, after dinner, during dinner, or just at the bar?
I think it's such an important part of the industry. Without bartenders, we don't have jobs. They're the ambassadors, really. We're the facilitators. We help give them the information, but the amount of touch points these bartenders have is exponentially greater than anything I can do. And I take great pride in being able to speak with these individuals of genuine interest. They want to learn more. And my big thing is, let me help you make money. I just want you to get a bigger tip. I want you to be able to do more in your own job. So it's giving them weapons for their quiver, right? What's going to be able that they can pull out to help them, get them from that, $8 pour to an $18 pour. What's that little thing? So back pocket stories, I find, are really organic ways of bringing up a pour. I know a lot of people may struggle to say, well, I don't really want to offer a single malt because I don't know much about it. And if anyone asks me, well, is it an Isla? Is it a Speyside? They might get a little jittery and not really know what the next answer is. So I always try and define as much as I can for them and give them the freedom where it's like, well, there's no rules about this, but people define it by region. And then within the region, what you can have is this Speyside is your favorite Speyside because of blank. And it might be, well, they've got really beautiful, stills, and I like the lightness and floralness of all their whiskeys. So then they have, 3 or 4 in the back bar. They say they're typically really floral and gentle on the palate. And if you like this, I think you'd really like that. And it's just that little connector that they can use to bridge between what the person or customer asked and where they want to lead them. And I would typically share my own anecdotes, my own little stories. And I'd also like to pose it to them and said, well, now you've drank it. How would you, pair it with this on the menu? Or if I were to ask you about this element, what would you think fits really well? And as soon as they give an answer that, I typically would reinforce immensely, they feel empowered. It's not my answer they've taken. It's their own answer that should be quite easy to remember because they said it. And so anytime we can build up these little, back pocket anecdotes or stories, it's their own that they can now have forever. So I really get a lot of advocacy in bartenders who genuinely like it and put that into their own words. Because if they try and recreate what I've said, it suddenly becomes even more difficult. And I think that's the best thing you can do is empower people to be even better at what they're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think those are really, really clever words. Go ahead, Jordan.
I used to say, I think I actually cultivated this when I was at Edrington. So I love that approach. And it was, everyone wants to be the expert at their next cocktail party, right? How for a consumer, right? Like that's the bartender way. And the flip side of it on the consumer side is like, how can I make this person like the rock star at their next cocktail party? Oh, well, let me tell you what I know about this whiskey, right? Like people love to have social capital. If you can give them social capital, like it's everything, right? Giving bartenders information, right? Giving consumers social capital, depending on how your job shakes out, I think is a great way to look at it. And like, giving them the tools and letting them run with it.
Absolutely. No, I think it's really great because it is important, because I think, and we all know this. So you go into a bar And if you've ever asked that question, like, what do you recommend? Bartenders will recommend the things they're comfortable talking about. Everybody is, right? We're only going to talk, most of us, we only talk about things we know. We don't generally go off into topics, I'm not going to sit there and tell you, I don't know, anthropology and like start talking about it because I don't know anything about it, right? So it's like, you talk about things you know. So if you give them those back pocket stories or you give them those social capital, that's the things they're going to discuss. And that's the things they're going to talk about every single time. And it is a great way of giving them that kind of confidence to be able to talk about your product and recommend it. And Cam, we talked about yesterday, and also increasing the check so that they can get a bigger tip and they can make more money. And these are all things that work. And this is why brand ambassadors have jobs, because it is a lot about education. And people used to not give, yeah, we have to sell. But at the same time, if that bartender feels confident about your brand and loves your brand, they're going to recommend it. It's going to be the one they reach. So no, I think those are all great examples, Cam, by the way, as well. All right, so I want to talk about, Jordan, you and I talked about this yesterday because, and Cam, I'm sure you've experienced this because every brand ambassador does, legal, right? So especially when you work for a large corporation, legal can be the thing that just stops your dreams. Like, it's just like you have a dream, you have this amazing idea, you develop it. Everybody's like, oh my God, it's the best thing I've ever fucking heard. Like, I'm so excited. And then you like throw it out to legal and it just dies there. Like, it just sits there. And like, cause they have 17 other things on their plate. And it's like, your dream is the last thing on their docket. They're like, yeah, this is nice, but yeah, it's not as important as the 17 other things that are happening that the president just sent me or whatever. So Jordan, you came up with an idea and something that you've been, a concept of how you've been helping your brand ambassadors kind of get things passed a little faster and kind of streamline the process for them as well as your legal team. I don't know if you can expand upon that because I thought it was quite genius.
It was out of necessity, but it's made everyone's life so easier. And that is, we actually developed a digital tasting platform website. So once these people got media, started running with it, we realized we had to kind of make their access to digital tastings, if we wanted it to feel formal and be able to package it right, and we love Facebook and we love Instagram, right? But something that felt like more an event. We actually created a whole website, but then our team was like, great, we want to use it. We want to do all these events. We want to do all these digital activations. And what we were running up against is not only digital presence new for Brown-Forman brand ambassadors on the whole, right? Legal has all these new types of events. And so what we were able to do is it started with specifically this one particular website, but what we were able to do is create a very simple form, digital form. It's right now we live in Google Forms because we're a Google company, right? But because we're a Google company, I realize somebody knows how to do this. I don't know. It's not me. I don't know how to set up this form, but I know someone in the company does, right? So you just think that way. I want to do X. How do I find the yes? Find the yes. Everyone's in my whole team is so sick of my saying that. But what we did, the form, and we basically it asks all of the questions that I've ever heard in my last year and a half of legal ask back and forth to brand ambassadors about their events. Let's put it all in, right? Here's every question you need that legal could possibly ask you about your event. So what you do when you're ready to get approval, or better yet, when you're ideating the event so that you don't go 50 down the road, you're going to have to go 50 yards back, right? Is fill out all the details, right? And it hit submit. What happens when we hit submit is that I worked with my IT team on the background to basically do if X, then Y sort of communication structure. Mm-hmm. So if they said it's this brand, it emailed automatically their social media manager, their brand lead, their field marketing manager, and their agency manager. So they have lots of managers, right? So it emails all of these folks and immediately sends it to legal with the right heading, with the date of the event, right? And this was a simple IT format that took the Google product lead at Brown-Forman like a day to do, right? It changed everything because the legal wasn't getting 17 emails about the same event. They were getting one, and automatically everybody who needed to be CC'd was CC'd, right? It's one of those Google forms. It has the asterisk. If you didn't fill out what brands it is, it's not going to know who to send it to. So you better fill that out, right? And it's just a good way for everybody to be organized, understand what questions are going to be asked, and to simplify the communication on it so it goes through a single form. And just so much easier. And again, this is not my genius in the sense of I knew how to build it. But I knew that like as a company like Brown-Forman, like somebody has that capability. And if you're a brand not in a company like Brown-Forman, know that that probably is really simple for someone who understands Google, right? Google Forms. So I would assume like after ask your digital savvy friends, right? People maybe even not in the industry. There's simple solutions that can streamline that sort of thing. Again, once it's easier for legal to digest, for me, that was an easy way to I want they see all the details, and the only red flag they see is detail C. They're like, okay, well, detail C is where my question is. I don't have to ask you 17 questions over 17 days about every other detail that you forgot to tell me,
Yep.
Or I don't have to go, oh crap, we have to go back to the beginning because you didn't CC your social media manager, and this involves social media. It's like, nope, it's all there.
all there. No, it's freaking genius. And I think one of the key things also, not even just about the Google Forms, which is amazing. I think the fact that because it's automated makes everybody's life easier. But I think even within the company, it's like you were thinking about all the legal questions you got, but it's like, for anybody doing this, it's like sit down with your legal, if you can, sit down with somebody in legal and be like, or gather everybody, what are all the questions that legal always ask us? And then come up with that list of questions. Because it's true, there is a certain questions that constantly come back. It's like, okay, how many people can make? What is the size of the samples everybody's going to get? Is there education in there? So it's like knowing, like there's certain questions that are always asked. And if you are able to fill them out beforehand, you'll probably get events approved a lot faster. So it's sitting down with somebody from legal and being like, what do you need to know for this to be a yes? And then writing that question,
and we have
writing the answers.
Form that is not necessarily the Google form. It's like a worksheet. It just looks pretty. It's what we send out to people to like announce that we have this thing. And it's basically, we call it a creative brief. It's a creative brief for your event. What do you need to know? What's the creative, juice behind it? It could be a simple like Word document. So
yeah. But also you said the same thing you were talking about also for your menus, right? Don't you have a set format for like menus for your events? Yeah, talk about that.
Events, what we did specifically for this website of, tasting events, we have a whole folder of items people can use. And with this particular folder, we have one that's for instance, invitations. Now, a lot of people don't realize like digital invitations have to say the same thing at the bottom. Depending on the brand, it changes a little bit. Depending on the year, it changes a little bit. Depending on the type of where it's going to be shared, it changes a little bit. It's wild, right? And I didn't even know any of this stuff until I was in sort of more inside of the corporation, right? And less out in the field. So for me in the field, it was so freaking frustrating because I didn't understand why it was so important where the period needed to be. And now that I'm inside, I kind of don't have to I don't really have to know why. I just have to know it has to be there. So what was like, I took okay, we know it has to be there. Let's take away the frustration by going ahead and creating templates, right? And I've created those. I worked with one designer. I paid one fee, and I have all the templates, all single branded. So we have lots of brands in our portfolio, and basically our team can either use those templates, and they're easy to fill out. There's PowerPoint and Adobe, or they can look at the template and say, okay, you know what I need to know? I know the logo has to be this one, and I know the text on the bottom has to be that. Let me just copy and paste it into the design that I want to make. Great. Yeah. And I think, just make it easy, like make an easier path toward the yes. Again, give them tools, get out of their way.
And no, it is really genius. Cam, you're shaking your head. Are you like, yep, I could use that, or like you're doing some things?
Oh no! Again, I from my marketing background, you went through little advertisements where everything had to go through it, and the fun part about being a BA is you pick up all these little skills to it. So when you get to these levels, as Jordan's saying, she could kind of think holistically, and she's like, well, I know there's a better solution. I don't know how to do it, but what I need is this. And you're kind of like, yeah, it's amazing that you keep building up where we don't start with the answers. We go through the experience and go, but I could do that better. And that's the amazing part about this is we've been given opportunities to improve these tools. And I think Jordan's in an amazing position to filter that down in her advocacy position. And it's great that we have a chance now to cross-pollinate better than ever, even right now, right? We're in 3 different locations. We're able to have these conversations. People can come in and learn, and they may go, suddenly it fell into place. And I love that this cross-pollination has been capable during COVID, where I think most of us go back in field completely ready to tackle something new where we may have been terrified of it before. So it's amazing that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, very, very cool. Very cool. Well done, Jordan. Well done. It really is. And it seems everybody be like, you're probably like, it's something, but no, it is such a thinking outside the box and making a pain in the ass, something that's such a frustrating thing for so many people, and simplifying it to something and you're like, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. All right, we're going to talk about going into the fields. We're going to actually talk about that now that the market is opening up. But I also want to talk about working with distributors, right? So we didn't really talk that much about this yesterday, but I know you've all done it. So, and it is, something that's new for most people, and they become a brand ambassador. Even if you've worked behind a bar, if you're the buyer, yeah, you dealt with your sales rep and you bought things and you understood how it worked a little bit. But Cam, you started talking about this yesterday, and I just wrote a note and I can't remember. I'm like, what did we talk about when it came to the distributor? But I had a note as far as inspired my question. I just can't remember what it was. But it is something that's tricky it can be tricky, and it can take a little bit of time to understand it. And do you have any best practices, like how you work with a distributor, like who you exactly work? I don't know how it works in Canada. Like, do you work directly? I know it's the state, the biggest liquor store in the world is the state, but do you work with sales reps? Do you have to work with a distributor in Canada?
Yeah, so because of Edrington's size in terms of us being, I think, more of a smaller scale than the Brown-Formans, the Diageos of the world, again, being owned by a charitable trust in the Robertson Trust, we have to be very nimble with what we do. And so to take advantage of an established system, our distributor in Canada is Beam Suntory. And so it's great that we're able to rely on them to be the manpower where there's maybe 4 of us in the country who work for Edrington. And for me, it's a balancing act, but I work really with the brand team, my territory manager, and then the distributor or the sales teams in the different regions I work in. And I think the big thing you and I were discussing is, when I go into market, it's kind of like brand education, brand, and it's like commercial objectives,
that's
sales,
right. Yeah.
volume. How do you meet? Where's the axis? So it's working with the teams and learning from them, and then providing feedback, being honest and being like, hey, so I went and did this event and it was great, but I don't think it achieved what we wanted to be able to do. As ambassadors, we write how many post-action reports, the monthly review. What did I spend all these hours doing? What am I spending my dollars on when I go to these things? So being able to prove, hey, this was ineffective or this was really great, where are the wins and the losses? And then having that feedback to say, if their objectives are aligned with my brand objectives, we'll have a greater success. We're rowing in the same direction. So over my almost 4 years in the role, there have been times when we're spinning because what they're trying to achieve and what I need are just in 2 different points. But that's what you have to do, is you have to speak up. You have to make yourself active and say, hey, this is where I think we find a solution. I don't put a black hat on and say, well, that doesn't work, I'm not going to do that. It's, hey, what I would love to get out of this is X and Y. And 9 times out of 10, people are bound to meet you halfway, or at least start inching towards what that goal is. So the big thing for me is both having the commercial and the marketing objectives very close, if not on the same parallel.
No, that's yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it was, because there is that political battle, right? So your brand team has an objective of where they see your brand and where they want it to be, and then your sales rep have another objective. They're just trying to get placements. Let's just get 2 bottle placements everywhere we can, and then sometimes you're working with the wrong reps. You're out in the field and you're like going out to their accounts, and you're like, this is the biggest waste of my time. So it's like, why am I with this rep right now? It's not going to, it's not achieving our objectives. I'm not really helping him achieve his, or I am, because he's using me to like create a cocktail menu for a bar, and like, but they're going to be putting Smirnoff and other brands that I don't have KPIs on when I worked for Diageo. It's great for him, but not so great for me. But sometimes you just have to suck it up and do it. But it is speaking up, right? And be like, hey, so these are my goals. What are your goals, right? Is that you're saying, like, where can we find some alignment? Maybe we don't go to these accounts, but do you have accounts that maybe both of these things work in? Is that what you're saying? Like, it's finding that crossover?
To an extent, it's being proactive and being not prescriptive, but hey, here's where I think you can really win here, and here's what value I can bring to this. So then it's almost, you're teeing them up for a home run. If you give them where you need to go, what you need to do, and what you need to achieve it with, all they really got to do is a little bit of legwork, a little bit of conversation, and then boom, they'll go, oh wow, that's really easy. So that's an effective way to use an ambassador. You know, you're managing upwards at times, right? You want to make sure that they're able to do their job better, and you bring value to it. All the while, you're working towards your end goal in a really effective way. So, like I said, it's really helping them learn how best to leverage you. Because in your head, they may say, oh, yeah, I need that. Okay, well, I know Cam's going to be in town today, so yeah, he'll come and do a tasting.
Right.
But there was never well, this is what we're going to get. Yeah.
No, that makes so much sense, because you do have to play the game. It's a political game, and you both have to try to win, but it's about making them look like rock stars. Your job is to make the sales reps look great, right? Not the other way around. And that's a big one. And a lot of people have to learn, like, they have to put their ego in check. It's not about you personally. It's about making them hit their goals so that your brand hits your goals so that you get paid. But when you can make them both align really well, it's best for everybody. All right.
That's a great call out, though, is removing the ego is, you know, it's not Cameron, it's the Macallan. And the event for the Macallan has to be this way. I'm going to be strict on this, and this is what we have to be. And at times you've made concessions, but more and more you've got to be driven by that DNA, because it's only when it's consistent on all fronts and it's immersive that we really drive that point home of, this is what makes it special. This is why you drink this over this. So at times, yeah, you've got to really separate you and be like, well, no, this is what the objective is. So it's an ongoing battle.
It is an ongoing battle. Jordan, you look like you have some great points. You're like, oh,
I just
have some points.
Yes. I just want to be like, yes, just snaps for you. One of the other things that I always found really valuable too is I treat my distributor team, whatever that is, like locally, nationally, whatever, as almost like a universe of potential accounts, right? And I look at cultivating relationships with very specific reps as creating the perfect target account list, right? Because, and I've seen this in every distributor I've ever worked with, right? Is like, there are certain reps who've been there a while, who've been assigned certain types of accounts or have cultivated a certain type of account list. There are going to be like 4 to 5 reps in your whole team that you want to be their friends, right? And they're going to have very specific personality, but they're going to have the accounts that you need to be in for your brand, right? And but some that you maybe want to be in to show the brand what you can do in those accounts. Okay, great. I think what the goal is there is cultivating the relationships and showing value to those people. I think where a lot of brand ambassadors slip up, and a lot of sales teams cause their brand ambassadors to slip up, is making them a yes man or a yes woman or a yes person, right? You are not for every single account and every single distributor rep. The best thing you can do for you is to be selective and to spend time. You're gonna go on terrible work withs. You're gonna go on useless. Gonna happen. Take it as a learning experience. Like, and what we need to do as brand ambassadors is, I think, similar to what you said, Cam, is tell the distributor what you need, right? If you're still in the stage of like, I don't know what that target account list of distributor reps is, but I want to get there, work with your distributor manager, work with the manager of the team, right? And sometimes that can be really daunting. But I think what the goal is there is saying, okay, actually, here are the target accounts that I think are great. Here's my list. I've gone into the distributor system and matched them to these 3 reps. I'd like to do work with those reps. And that's what I started to do at my Macallan, not telling them I want a work with for Macallan, telling them, like, do the legwork before and say, I want these reps, right? And they say, I only get with one of them this month. And I said, great, I'll go with that one, right?
I'll go with that one.
Cultivating it as almost like you cultivate a target account list and investing the time in those, because eventually those target accounts, you're going to own half their menu. Eventually, those distributor reps who you want to be in all their types of accounts, and the ones who always get assigned the new cool accounts too, that match those styles of accounts, it's magical. They're going to start calling you, right? But again, it took me about a year into Macallan, and I remember getting a call from like the rep and being like, yes, like I hung up the phone, called my father, called me, because and he was like, he called me and said, I got it. We're going to crush in this. And I was like, yeah. And he explained it and he was right. And we were going to go in and crush, and we got great cocktails and great placements because, again, we cultivated those very singular, very specific relationships instead of saying, I'm here to do whatever you want, distributor, right?
Yes.
You both get into a system where they're throwing cases, your product's not moving, you're wasting your time, you don't have time to do your other events, or you're working 90-hour weeks, which, by the way, I know you're a brand ambassador. You do not need to be working 90-hour weeks. Like, no one needs 90-hour weeks, right?
No.
So anyway, again, look at the distributor sales team as if you were cultivating a target account list, and cultivate, and cultivation takes some time, right?
It really does. It is about, I think that's really great about us, about having the list, so then you can present it. It's like, who works in these type of accounts, and finding out. And did you ever work, I've always worked, like, for me, it's like, for a lot of brands, like working with your market manager, because the market manager is the go between you and the distributor a lot of times. So it's like going to them. I've gone to them and be like, these are the style of accounts. Can you direct me to the right distributor manager who manages the reps that have these type of accounts? Because if there's lots of different branches, like Empire had like lots of different branches, and then it's like, can you tell me, now I introduce this person, like, okay, here's my style, who are the reps that go with it? And it does take working with going to a few GSMs, seeing who the stars are, doing a little brand, ass kissing and getting to know them at the GSMs, talking to them, and then going out, maybe taking them out for a drink, getting to know them. If they have their account, you're my account list, great. You know what? Like, can we just go out? I can support that account. Let's go to that account. I'm going to buy you a drink at that account, so I can help support you, whatever brand it, and then, like, let me tell you my goal. What are your goals? Here are my goals. Like, okay, how do we start working together? Just to start the relationship off. Some of the tactics I used to use to just kind of kick it off with my sales reps to find the right ones, because it is key. Because there is only about 4 or 5 that you really want to work with at the end of the day, sadly.
Yeah, I think there was something we said yesterday, and Jordan, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's the power of no. We always want to be pleasing. Yes, yes, yes. How can I help? And I'm always about that. And I've learned over the years is the power of no gives more value to your yeses. It's in Canada, we say sorry too much, and sorry suddenly lost value because it's constant. Sorry, oh, sorry, oh, sorry. But yeah, when you say no strategically, and you say no for a reason, and you explain why, and then you give them that solution of this is what a yes will be, you get that yes, and suddenly people are calling your phone, and they give you the opportunity where you like, this is what I wanted, and suddenly it's a win. So I think that's a whole other topic that could be the power of no.
Oh, that's great.
Oh yeah, it's like dating. It's the same power. It's like the power of no. Power of just saying nope, being very selective. But not that I've done it in a very long time. But anyway, sorry, I didn't want to go down that road. But this is the first that I thought of. I'm like, wow, it's the same as like, I guess I'm teaching it to my 16-year-old daughter of just like, not just date every boy in high school, just the one guy. Anyway, different topic for a different day. All right, so now the market is opening. And we're going to wrap it up soon because we're getting to out of time. But the marketing is opening up, right? And you and your team are starting to go back into, your team's starting to go back into the market. Cameron, you're starting to go back in the market. Cameron, how are you going to start like entering? Like, what's your plan to start like, just saying hey again?
Yeah, the first thing I get to do is actually leave my home because we finally lifted the emergency orders and we've just had patios open on Friday. So my job now is to go in and check on people. And, we were talking about, helping bartenders during that time when we couldn't go out, and it was text messages here and there. How are you doing? Here's a little care package. Do you want to go and grab coffee or go for a walk with the dog? That's kind of how I've maintained locally to me because I couldn't go very far. So now it's going back to that sort of targeted account we had over a year ago and saying, okay, who's here? What are you doing? Let's just check out where you are and do almost an audit. That's really what I'm doing right now is let's just audit everything, find out where everyone's landed, find out, has your business plan changed? Are you still sticking with this? And then, you start cultivating those key spots and those key moments where I can invest a lot of time here. I think more now than ever, you can't be everywhere. So you're going to have to find those spots where you're going to get the big wins, build them up, support them as best you can. And when that's self-sustaining, then you can start building out from there. So really going to start slow, but cast a wide net and to figure out what the market looks like. Because we lost a lot of amazing accounts. They ran out of money. COVID really robbed us of them. But now you've seen a power shift and new places have opened. Properties have suddenly dropped in value. And so that new bespoke bar is going to be really cool in there. So really my job is relearn my city, relearn my market, find out where all my friends have ended up, where these new faces are, and just kind of shake hands and kiss babies all over again and be as much of a presence as possible.
I think that's such a great and smart approach. Jordan, I don't know if your team is doing something similar, or how are they going out there in the world?
And it's, again, working in the US, right? It's been, talk about the Wild West, right? Every state is different. Every state opened on
Roaring 20s.
Things open, things close, some things. Right. So every time, I mean, it was stop and start and stop and start and stop and start. But it's funny, we were talking a little bit earlier about, just some like advice we'd give to brand ambassadors and how we cultivate talking about our brands to trade. And the biggest piece of advice I always give to anybody, new ambassadors, any team that, I'm managing, is you're not there to talk. You are there to listen. And that is not just because we're coming back from a pandemic. It's because if you come in with the idea of going to the person behind the bar who's making the buying decisions, or just the bar back, right? And talk to them about what their bar needs, about what they want their program to be, then you can together create a really synergistic relationship where you can actually start to use your samples appropriately because you're pouring them things they'd actually buy. You can help them be creative. You can get what both of you want just by first listening. Lead with listen, lead with listen, lead with listen. And so I think right now that's even more important. Lead with listen. There are going to be, they're just going to be bars that are alive, but they're just hanging on and they kind of don't know what they. So then you can be more of a thought partner, but there are going to be other bars who know exactly what they want. And I also think that we can't go in with the assumption that we know, even if they were a target account. So Cam, I like what you said earlier, is even though they existed before, it doesn't mean they're in the same place. Because, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of bars are like, okay, cool, we're going to have 5 SKUs. And they better do everything we need to accomplish because we cannot have inventory and we cannot spend that amount of money, right? So maybe we can have a single malt, but it's going to be the one. So Cam, give me, or like Jordan, we definitely want a bourbon cocktail, right? But it needs to be the same as our pour list. Like which one does that accomplish, right? And I think our team needs to be agile and be willing to ask what folks need before they suggest the story, the brand, the event, the package, the promotion, right? Suggest the promotion that fits the needs of the account as they tell them to you. And I think that's going to be the most important thing that we do as we go back. And our team is really strong. And I'm like, again, every day, the reason I get to get out of the way is because I'm like the soccer mom on the sideline. I get to be like, yay, go. You guys are so great. I love you so much. We scored, right? Like that's like, I get up every day and I get to do that. And I think that, if that's the chant I'm chanting from the sideline, lead with listen, I think we're going to be in the best place we can possibly be, wherever that is.
I love it. I love it. 2 ears, 1 mouth. So keep quiet. Just ask questions and sit back and listen to where somebody needs. I think it's just a great life lesson in general. Cam, you look like you had something else to say. No, good?
I think that's it. It's walk before you can run. And I think for anyone who might be a new ambassador and they're coming into this, and I know a good friend of mine, Claire, got hired right before this all broke out. So she hasn't really had much of a chance to be this in field. So if there are people like that, get your priorities laser focused, know exactly what you have to achieve. What are your 1, 2, and 3 priorities? So when you go to these conversations and they say, I got 2 distributors or 2 people I'm working with, what's the one thing you need? What do we work together on? Have that ready to go. And I think you'll find a lot of success. Don't try and do everything. Let's just focus on rebuilding together.
Now, incremental steps. Well, speaking of that, the great advice, because we usually end on, if there was you can share one of 2 things. One is if there's a mistake that you have made in your career that you have learned from and love to share it with somebody else and say, this is something I did, don't do it, and this is what I learned. Or if you want to share a last nugget of knowledge to any brand ambassadors out there of like some key lessons that you have learned, whether it's this year or just in your career? That's how we like to wrap it up. So Cam, for you, is it like something you've learned about and you're like, don't make the same mistake I had? Or is it like, here's some great words of wisdom?
Oh, I've made many small mistakes that have led to big learnings, and I think that's a great thing to think about. I don't think I can pin one thing down there, so I'll think if I've
Pick a
learned,
favorite.
pick a favorite. I think it's. I guess we can go back to the distributor thing where you and I shared a story where it was like I kept being invited out to market, and I kept saying yes, expecting a different result after we'd talk and say, yeah, we're going to do this time. And then I came out again and the same thing happened. And eventually it was like, well, what's happening, right? It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting change. For me, it's identifying something that doesn't work and proactively changing it, whether it's going and challenging the sales rep and say, hey, this isn't working. I need you to achieve this for me. But in this case, that wasn't working. I went above and I went to my direct report and said, hey, I need to say no to this person. I need to achieve this. How best do I get to this destination? Don't be afraid to ask for help. I went in thinking I need to win no matter what. And sometimes you don't. And don't be afraid to ask for help, even though sometimes it's humbling and you want to be scared to do it. You'll be respected for it. You'll learn more from it and you'll get to your destination faster. So always remember you're a part of a team. As a brand ambassador, you can get really isolated on your little island in market sometimes, living out of a suitcase, out of a hotel room. Pick up the phone, put your hand up, schedule a meeting, and let your voice be heard because people want to hear it and they want to help you succeed. So I think that's the key learning.
I think that's really great words of advice. Jordan?
Okay, I have two, and I would say two pieces of advice. And one is, when you start, if you're newer, this is good. This is a really good exercise. Do it now. If you've been in here 6 years, do it like yesterday, like right now, like when you stop watching this, which is write down your why. Like I am a Simon Sinek fan. I'm not a super fan, but you need to be able to bring yourself back to why you decided to take this job, because this is the second piece of advice, and they speak to each other. No one knows how to do this job. No one, not a person. Yeah. And that's because every company does it differently. They have different expectations. They have different definitions. Brand ambassador has been lifted up and completely diluted, right? And so what you need to understand is you need to understand why you work in spirits and why you are here in this role. Because there are going to be so many times that you have to go back to that little piece of paper or the notes app in your iPhone and like remind yourself.
Hey, Nicola.
Hi. Or remind.
I didn't realize she was there.
You're here.
Anyway, sorry to disturb your thoughts. I'm sorry. I just saw that pop in there.
And I'm a brand ambassador, so we're all good. We're all good with that. But yeah, no, again, it's truly about reminding yourself why you're here, and also reminding yourself that no one has to do this job, and we spirits, we do not save lives. So, have fun and remember why you do it, and give yourself a place to go back to when the world feels insane. And it's probably going to feel kind of insane for a while as we refigure out how to go into accounts. So.
Absolutely. I think that's really, knowing your why is great. I would add to that, and I'm sure you agree, it's like, have a goal. Like, what is your goal for this year? What is every year, like, or every month, I like to have like, weekly goals, daily goals, like at least one thing that I'm going to achieve this day. If I do nothing else, I'm going to achieve this thing. But like at the end of my year, what are the couple of things I want to make sure I've achieved and why? Like, what is the why behind it? Like, what is it going to get me to, what's the goal behind that? Because if you don't have a goal, then you don't have a destination. Then suddenly you'd be in your position for a very long time. And you're like, why am I still here? And I haven't moved up. It's because you didn't have a goal to get yourself. And once you have that goal, and I'm sure you agree, and you know your why, then you know what questions to start asking. What are the meetings you should start sitting in? What are the books you should start reading? What are the courses I should start taking? Because you're like, oh, this goes to my goal. Like, it will get me to that destination a lot faster. But if you're just floundering, then you're like, you don't know, I'm in this meeting, but I'm not really sure why I'm in this meeting, and I'm not really getting anything out of it because I don't have a goal. I have nothing to put it towards. So know your why, and I think having a goal are great things. And going and asking for help, always great words of advice, because being a brand ambassador is isolating, and people do start to think that they have to figure it all out themselves. So that's what people like Jordan are for. and other bosses, is to ask for a little bit of help, because we've done it before.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. Go ahead, Jordan.
Last thing before we go, by the way, as a brand ambassador, if you're looking for the next step up, because I love that you said that, apply for the job you don't think you're qualified for. That's why I'm in the job.
Yes, absolutely. And start doing the job that you want before you actually get it.
Yeah.
Start doing the things that you want to do. And Nicola, if you're still watching, thank you so much. Missed you for tuning in and for giving your comments. Jordan, Cam, this has been fantastic. This is going to live on the Facebook page for 2 weeks, and it also goes on YouTube and on my website, so it's there for a while. And I'm also going to take a couple of clips of this and put it on Instagram and tag you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, but this was great.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was fantastic.
It was really great.
Jordan, it's fantastic to connect with you as part of the extended Edgerton family and learning from you today. And I'm excited to continue tuning into these. These are amazing, and I think we all need it.
Thank you. All right. Bye, guys. See you soon. Be well.
Bye, everyone.